We are live again. It's Friday for the 6-5 weekly podcast. Dan and I are sporting the merch. Beep boop, beep boop. And I am hearing through some meetings and planning and meetings that we're actually going to have a merch store. Pretty excited about that. And since I've lost half a human being in weight, clothes just fit a little better. But you know what hasn't changed though, Dan? My really short torso. This freaking vest goes down to like the middle of my
it goes down the middle of your thighs. Yeah, it's funny. Besides the fact that I'm the host this week and you kicked us off, but you know what? I really appreciate that is that the other day when you and I were sitting with Sridhar, my wife said to me, she goes, "Did Pat get shorter?" She saw that picture, and I said to her, I said, this is actually the perennial, persistent, pervasive debate that you and I have, and that's all about how do we make ourselves look more even in height when you have 80% of your height in your legs and I have 80% of my height in my torso. And I said, I think I'm just better for TV, because I always
are, and we should be working on my exit package from the 6-5 because
I'll give you the eject button, buddy.
Okay.
But yeah, by the way, the merch is looking good. I'm sorry about the down, actually, for whatever reason, this particular brand of vest just is very, very long. And so, I guess it's that kind of question mark of style. If you tuck your shirt in, it's kind of weird. But like, since I always wear my shirt out, sometimes it's good to have it a little longer so the shirt doesn't come out the bottom. But hey, this isn't a fashion show, is it? This isn't.
I don't think so. And by the way, sorry for kicking this thing off.
No, it's fine. You know what? This gave me a new thing for us to squabble about. I hear a lot that people really don't come to the show for the analysis; they come to hear us banter. So, whether you're here to hear us banter or you want to get the best insights and advice and analysis, not financial advice, by the way, on what's going on in the tech industry, Patrick and I are here for you almost every Friday. And if it's not Friday, it's some other time during the week. We like to pick the 6 most important technology stories, at least those that we think are the most important. And we like to talk about them for 5 to 15 minutes each, just depending on our mood. And that's actually why it's the 6-5, 6 topics, 5 minutes. Sometimes I have to tell that story over again. So periodically, I feel like it's important to drop it in. Episode 203, we're dropping that back in so people understand the origin story of the 6-5. But listen, we got a great show this week, a lot to talk about. You and I made a quick jaunt to the southern border. We weren't there for political reasons. We were there because transnational localism, and we're going to talk about Zoho Day 2024. We're also going to talk about a incredible earnings report from ARM that led to I don't know, I'm not going to tell you, because if you don't know, we're going to tell you in a little bit. Then we're going to talk about a pretty substantial tie-up of 2 mega players in the data protection space. We're going to talk Apple Vision Pro. And this is going to be a good one, because I don't think we're going to talk about anything but Pat's use and how Pat is using the Vision Pro. Very interested in this. I've been kind of following Pat around with my GoPro to watch him use his Vision Pro. And we're going to make a documentary about this. We might put it out on the 6-5 Connected with Diana Blass. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some updates from Google on its generative AI. Something's happening to Bard. Bard.
I know. Bard is always a terrible name.
Since this was a lighter news week for whatever reason, we're going to end up talking rumors. We're talking a little bit about a rumor, but it's a rumor that's it seems to be coming to fruition. You hear it once, you hear it twice, you hear it 3 times, you hear it 300 times, and you start to go, I think there might be something to that rumor. And we're going to explore whether or not there is, in fact, something to that rumor. So, Pat, that's the longest introduction I've ever done on our 6 topics. Usually I just name the companies we're going to talk about, and then I get right after it. But listen, we got to keep iterating and innovating on this show. And if it's banter you want, it's banter you shall get. But if it's advisory and analysis and insights, then listen to Pat. He's got all the good stuff. All right.
What's up, Ron Westfall? Coming in, baby. Coming in hot.
Ron. What's up, buddy? We call him Wreck-It Ron. Sometimes we call him the Fall Guy. But whatever we call him when we need to know all things 5G, telco, networks, IoT, resident smart guy. Follow all his insights over at the Futurum Group and on the 6-5. All right, Pat, quick disclosure, disclaimer. I'm sorry, I got to do this. This show is for information and entertainment purposes only. And while we will be talking about publicly traded companies, we will not be giving buy ratings, and we will not be setting price targets, and we will not be offering financial advice. So please just let us talk about this stuff. Listen to what we have to say. We're bringing it from an industry perspective. Yeah, we are not equities analysts. Don't claim to be, don't pretend to be. But we both did go on TV this week to give our technology insights. And we'll talk about that more on the show. All right. First topic, first thing, Zoho Day, not a publicly traded company, but it was a lot of fun. We heard from the CEO, Sridhar Vembu, who we were the first to sit down with him in a 6-5 interview. And you're going to have to click the link. We'll drop that later when it goes live. Great conversation. Sridhar does not come to Zoho Day to talk all that much about Zoho itself. After doing this for a couple of years, I can tell you, Sridhar likes to focus on these bigger, broader sort of mega topics, trends. He likes to talk macroeconomy, geopolitics. This year, one of his big focuses was transnational localism. Last year, it was privacy, which is still top of mind for Sridhar. But what I really loved about the conversation, Pat, and we had our teams there. They spent multiple days, and it wasn't a big launch event. It was a focus on kind of the Zoho business, Zoho One, the distribution of products. This company really is set out and designed to be kind of that one-stop shop for small to mid-sized companies, and over the years has grown into larger and larger enterprise use cases. Whether that's ERP, CRM, supply chain, AI, silicon. I mean, this company, data management, privacy, web browsers, collaboration. They have a tool for everything. Very unique business approach. But Sridhar really spent a lot of his time talking about kind of two things. How the economy is going to continue to grow with a significant amount of the cash creation and business valuation all going into a few companies. Flashed a really interesting slide about the daily cash flow created by just, I think, a couple of companies. Maybe it was like Google, Microsoft, and Apple. Ironically, he made the call that the two companies last year that won were Microsoft and Apple or something.
Yeah.
You and I screamed out, NVIDIA! I don't know what happened, but we both thought that was interesting. But I guess maybe, again, from a different seat, different perspective, different place. But in the sit down, the interesting mega theme that he chose this year, this transnational localism, Pat, was all about bringing sort of economic value to economies that can support lower wage earners, lower cost of living, lower real estate valuations. And he was pointing to the fact that Zoho was making substantial investments to be in McAllen, Texas. So McAllen, just for anybody that isn't familiar, is like the southernmost point in Texas. It's a border city. It's a good size. It had pretty much everything, restaurants, shopping that, you would need. It's not what you'd probably see on an average CNN clip about the border. You didn't see the border wall. You didn't see a line of people crossing. You didn't see, all the craziness that you're seeing in the news right now. But what you did see is a city that you can probably live in, Pat, for 20% of the cost of living in Austin to buy a home. And Sridhar was really focused on kind of, as the ability to buy a home continues to become harder, you're seeing reproduction rates go down. That was a correlation that he made that was very, very interesting. People aren't having kids. They're not sure they can afford a place to live. These are kind of the things that he's thinking about and sharing. And what he's trying to do with Zoho, whether it's the work they do in southern India outside of Chennai, the farming that he likes to talk about, or it's the bringing Zoho offices and events into these smaller cities. It's connecting technology in the growth that technology is going to bring to smaller economies to make work more affordable. And Pat, I guess I'll just say the correlation that's really interesting is, you think about Texas itself. We are a microcosm of that same concept because moving from Silicon Valley to Texas, even though Austin now has become very, very expensive, still has a proportional income effect that seems very substantial to most people that make that transition. Now go from Austin to McAllen. I think what he's trying to say is, with distribution of workforce, with lower cost of living, it is very possible to put work into these economies, employ lots of people. I think one of the things that stuck with me the most, Pat, was when he talked about in India, for like $100 a month, you can get like workers that probably operate at a similar capability and quality. People that here might make $60,000 or $80,000 a year. So that disproportion, kind of creates this gap that we still societally have no opportunity or no idea of how to solve. I thought Shiro was really interesting. So, the company also went into its continued focus, privacy, AI, ERP, CRM, and that was a big part of it, Pat. But I always love the Shiro conversation. I'm going to kind of wrap there, but I always love, just kind of listening to his sort of broader strokes of things going on in the world that most people just don't talk about. And when a CEO of a tech company goes up in front of a room full of analysts, usually it is a big kind of, this is our big vision of our new products and technology. And Pat, I don't know that that's wrong. I think that makes a lot of sense, but it's also kind of different, fun, and interesting. And by the way, Zoho has built itself into probably around $1 billion company on annual revenue by being a little bit quirky, a little bit different, and solving problems for a very unique audience. And it's working. So a lot of credit to them. Check out the conversation when we post it. It'll go live.
Yeah, Zoho is one of the most unique companies out there from my point of view. And the conversation with their CEO was very unique. I mean, kind of reminded me, if I could pick a CEO whose conversations are closer, I'd probably pick Michael Dell. Michael Dell and Jeff Clark, the 1-2 punch. Jeff really hits products hard, and Michael is the statesman, and he's talking economics, he's talking culture and things like that. Now, Michael does love the products, and if you ask him, he has an incredible amount of detail around it. And, like I said, unique. Here we have most companies, and I'll say, Zoho's biggest competitors, who would probably be Salesforce, NetSuite, and SAP, folks like that. And they're propping up, standing up big outposts in major metropolitan areas. And this transnational localism, I think a great example was, nearly a decade ago when Zoho set up shop in Austin, when it wasn't this behemoth of a city. And, the way that I read McAllen is Austin might be the U.S. headquarters, but McAllen is likely going to be where all of the action will happen. And, you get the community excited. Who knows, you might get some tax breaks. Cost of labor is a lot less. And that doesn't mean that people aren't going home with less money. It just means the cost of living might be 50 to 60% lower than a major metropolitan area. So, it totally makes sense. I thought the AI conversation was interesting, Daniel, for nothing other than it didn't seem very impressed with the capabilities. And that again, I talk about Zoho being I've never heard a company with that point of view. In my first read, Daniel, is that it's maybe because they haven't figured out how to do it cost effectively. Their pricing approach is very interesting in that you will not pay more money to get AI infused results, right? Very similar to a kind of a Zoho, sorry, not a Zoho model, but a Zoom model. And I think, Zoom and Zoho are one of the only two companies I'm aware of. I'm sure there are more who isn't charging more, right? SAP does, Salesforce does, Microsoft, Google, as we're going to talk about a little bit later. I would have liked a little bit more product, like new product discussion and announcements, but that's just me. I'm a product guy. Wanted to see what was coming out, but my guess is that Zoholics is going to be the big place where they're going to do that. Stay tuned for Zoholics. The 6.5 will be broadcasting from that show.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, baby.
I know.
We're
right in our
cheering.
backyard.
Hey, Pat. Yeah, I do like when shows are here. My goal is to go nowhere next year.
Can you imagine that? I couldn't even imagine that. I think it'd be life-changing. I know it would be life-changing for me and my health. I am not as healthy doing all the travel that I do. My ring tells me that. My watch tells me that. You can see it. I turn into angry Pat, morning Pat most of the time. you know?
By the way, do you ever just like feel that you don't feel well, or are you 100 like? So I kind of wonder, like, if we're going to turn, you know, how GPS has sort of societally turned us into like idiots, like useful idiots behind the wheel. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, like I'm like, there's the restaurant in the entrance right there. It says enter, but the GPS said turn a block ago. So I'm like driving on the wrong street because it's like, no, the GPS has to know. There's no possibility that sign right in front of you. And my point is kind of like, you know, and I'm kind of funny because I'm a manual watch guy. I don't have an Aura ring. I mean, I do love the tech, and I played with it all. But I actually prefer to not. It's kind of like I don't always want to know. And you know how you and I are like the opposites. Like, you know, you're stressed in the moment. You're like, damn, look at my stress level right now. And I'm like, Pat, I can see it on your face. You look freaking pissed. Like, I know you're stressed. Like, and you know, like I'm kind of like, you know, it's like weight. It's like I don't weigh myself a lot because I can kind of tell when I'm eating well and feeling well. And if I weigh myself and it doesn't tell me what my body's feeling, you know, but every so often you need that truth bomb, and that's where the data is so valuable. So it's like interesting. We can become hyper dependent. We can completely decouple from it. Somewhere in the middle is balance. And just please don't wear a Vision Pro around that's like got like a weight scale so you can like watch your real time weight. You're like,
Hang on. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't put it on. Don't put it on yet.
All right.
Can we do the segment with it though?
You know, Dan, I looked at that. I looked at it on my countertop, and I looked at how ridiculous the case is, and I just left it right on there. It's like a freaking giant marshmallow.
Oh my God, it is. Okay. All right, Pat, talk about an explosion. So ARM, you and I both got to talk to Renee Haas on earnings day. I don't think I could have expected what came next.
Yeah, I mean, it was an absolute just explosion. Let me give you the data, but you know, we talk about, you know, somebody does a beat for the quarter, right? Beat top line, beat on the bottom line. They did a beat, raise, right? They raised for the quarter and they raised for the year. I mean, they absolutely categorically crushed it. And after hours, right, they were up 20 some percent, which was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then yesterday ran up 50%. I mean, just crazy. And a little bit of background, you know, listen, we're not equities analysts, we're industry analysts, but I feel like we have a much better view about a company's long-term prospects, market fit, what they can do to go in and grab profitable market share. And, you know, therefore, I was very bullish on its growth opportunities of what the company could do. That they came out, you know, people were like, there's no way they can stay in this. Stock went down. I feel vindicated at this point for the amount of growth that I knew that they had in them. And it's a really simple story, right? You have all of the markets that ARM is in getting an overall lift from AI. So the waterline is going off up across data center, across networking, across PCs, across smartphones. And then don't forget, I called the PC super cycle in the fourth quarter in January. Then you have segment share gain. So they're gaining market share. They're gaining market share in infrastructure, right? AWS. You've got Azure doing their custom Cobalt, right? You've got some folks overseas doing that, and they're gaining market share in automotive. It's kind of, you know, split between kind of Intel and ARM, but right now the basis is some custom chips that were like MIPS-based architectures. It's kind of weird, but work with me on this. And then you've got content gains in areas like smartphones. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, you have some people, you have small cores and you have big cores. And then you've got V8 version cores and V9 cores. Bigger cores, right? Like look at MediaTek. They're putting these giant big cores in there. You pay more for the big cores than you do for the small cores. The other thing is that ARM isn't just CPUs, it's GPUs, it's memory controllers, it's interfaces, it's buses, it's all that great stuff. And then you add on top of that this turnkey white glove offering that they do that says, hey, we're not just going to, throw some IP over the wall. We're going to offer you IP that has been taken all the way down and qualified in a specific fab on a specific process. And we're going to do some of the software testing and validation on this for you. And, it was very clear that what Microsoft Azure was doing with Cobalt was exactly that. And I will bet that AWS Graviton has a certain element of turnkey as well. So here we are, I don't know where they opened today, pretty dramatic. So they asked me on Yahoo Finance, Julie, hey, is this like real? And I said, listen, it's rich. Okay. Investors have to be putting in there products that don't exist yet. Maybe some new markets that I'm unaware of to maintain. And I only say that when I look at the market cap of, let's say, a company like Qualcomm or a company like AMD. And I'll end with this. They asked me, hey, Pat, what are some of the next, AI chip plays, right? And, my comment was, look directly. I mean, if you want to make it simple, let's look directly at the companies who are ARM's customers, and Qualcomm is ARM's biggest customer. So I would look there for potential growth.
Yeah, you called it out. I called it out. It was really, really interesting. I'm not a revisionist history kind of person, but I think ARM, when it first came out, was maybe trying a little too hard to have an AI story. And this was right around the IPO, but of course it was appropriate given what was going on in the market to try. But I think in the back of, up their sleeve, they kind of knew that this was going to happen. So 23 was a really GPU-centric year, okay? And the thing about the GPU-centric year was there were some plays for CPU. It was substantial because, again, the GPU doesn't run it's not running the application. You still got to have those big CPU cores. That's the whole Grace Hopper. NVIDIA is if you wanted a proof point, NVIDIA gave you a proof point. They chose an ARM-based architecture for the CPU side of their high-performance computing offerings that they were developing. Having said that, though, the obvious part is that what's the killer app? This is when we get to the Vision Pro, we can talk about this some more. God, it's dumb. All right, but when you sorry, but like the killer app for AI is not training. Training is the enabler of killer apps for AI. So you need all this horsepower in the data center so you can train all these models. And we're going to see the continuation of both these large models. I mean, God, did you see the news this morning? Sam Altman wants to go get $5 to $7 trillion. So he does apparently want to build fabs because there's no way you need $7 trillion for chip design. But anyway, God, I love going on these tangents.
Our audience expects us to, as long as we're not droning and being stupid.
Okay, well, can't promise all of that, but some of it. But the point is, you sort of see where this all is heading. Well, the killer app of inference basically is heavily run on the CPU. It's heavily going to be delivered on ASICs. It's going to be heavily delivered on CPU. And by the way, this isn't new. Intel's been talking DL Boost for years, running on Xeon. AI. You've seen all the ASIC development from AWS. You've seen it coming out with Microsoft. There are some training chips. But a lot of these are inference chips. A lot of these are focused on running applications, Pat. And so ARM has a really big role to play in all the compute horsepower that's going to run side by side. So you got this really, really positive growth engine sitting behind it. And you got content, Pat. You got content in every device. You got content in every vehicle that's growing. By the way, that's all more ARM. I mean, you're talking billions and billions of cores that, and ARM-based product content going into all these different devices. And Pat, you called the AI PC surge, but I don't think people even realize how big this is going to be in terms of expanding the amount of spend with ARM. So they've got this kind of multifaceted tailwind that's going to be more content per device, higher pricing on royalties because they're going to be doing more of the service delivery. And then on top of what you talked about, with the additional subsystems, the CSS stuff that they're doing, which is also another revenue stream. So of course, Renee was kind of lit up and glowing when we talked to him, because he's like, we're just getting to like the beginning of this tailwind. But just to not confuse people, this isn't like an ARM instead of NVIDIA thing. This is like ARM is the and play. And by the way, this tailwind is kind of holistic, because it's going to be good for x86 too. And I know people kind of want it to be like one or the other, but like when this AI PC boom goes, it's going to go on all fronts. It's going to go where, you know, x86 PCs are going to have an AI PC and an NPU and going to run these same kind of apps. And so are the ARM-based versions. And you mentioned Qualcomm, one of the biggest winners. Apple, one of the biggest winners. I know, it's hard to say it. But, you know, and by the way, all these vendors that are creating different systems, and the cloud providers, Pat, AWS, Microsoft,
Totally.
Ampere and Google, Ampere and Oracle, they're all going to be winners too. And so the market, by the way, I got one prediction, final note on this topic. The one reason people loved this was because for the very first time, these analysts could actually put something in their spreadsheet and start to figure out how much money ARM is going to make from AI. There's no other reason the stock goes up 50% or more in a day, except for the fact that people can now say, oh my gosh, we see how they're going to make money, which was the question mark when ARM came out, was they don't make a lot on their licensing and their royalties. Well, they're changing their business model. And by the way, every company that comes out IPO, you can be sure probably has about 6 to 8 quarters that they see in their forward-looking mirror that they know they can hit targets. And it's not always the case, but you can be sure SoftBank and ARM had a good idea of how they were going to make this run, and they picked a good time to come out. So
yeah, I had to throw out a truth bomb on Yahoo Finance, basically backing up what you said. Actually, most inference is run on a CPU, and I'm not saying on an SoC that has an NPU. That's what nobody talks about. But the problem is nobody can measure that, right? And you know, Intel can't say, you know, X% of this is run on this, because a CPU is the most diverse piece of silicon you can have, and you can't measure it, right? Yep. Anyways.
Maybe we will. I mean, measures of merit are important. We should ask Ryan Shrout, the president of
You know, I actually think this is more in the line of your data business, to be honest.
Well, I just mean like we should have some fun testing and competing all these different AI PCs and data center workloads. But yeah, you know, we got something for everybody. Yeah. You want the data? We got that too. All right, so let's jump into a mega deal, Pat. You and I had the chance to sit down with Cohesity CEO Sanjay Poonen, and we got to hear the inside skinny of a mega deal, Pat, in data protection. You know, tying up 2 of the largest players in the space and creating a $1.6 billion revenue per year company.
Yeah,
it's Veritas and Cohesity. And 1.3 billion of ARR. And so some key early points. This is going to take some time. It's going to take approval. This wasn't an overnight signed deal. Not like maybe like when the Futurum Group buys a company and then here we grow again. This is a serious moment of growth. You know, there's been a lot of competition. You got Rubrik, you got Cohesity, you've got Commvault, you've got Veritas, you've got Dell, mega player. I mean, and there's more. And that this particular space has been somewhat fragmented. And this was a super interesting deal. I give Sanjay Poonen a lot of credit for creativity, because in many ways it was a reverse kind of merger, and they're calling it a combination or a tie-up. Listen,
it's an acquisition, baby.
It's an acquisition. Sanjay is going to be the CEO. He'll be guided by Veritas CEO Greg Hughes, who will be part of the board, and he will be an advisor to Sanjay. But you're talking about a mega company now that serves well over 90% of the Fortune 100 are working with either Veritas or Cohesity. I think 96, Pat, of the 100, and 80% of the global 500. A mega ecosystem, a substantial set of VARs, integrators, and partnerships with companies like NVIDIA and others that they work with. Really good moment for the company, Pat. Gives them size and scale. You know where I think it's heading. I can't speak to where they think it's heading, but I think it's, Veritas, private company through its last go private effort. Cohesity definitely was on the trajectory. We heard rumors rumbling or news rumbling this last week about Rubrik going public. I think this is going to go public. I think this was kind of the step one, do this tie up. Step two, find all the synergies. Step three, announce an IPO. And of course, make sure you get your AI story in line, get your synergies and costs in line, get your customers in line, use the best innovation. I think Cohesity had a lot of that kind of front end speed and innovation for data protection. Veritas had a lot of that deep, long-term customer relationships, and they were deeply rooted inside of the customers. And this is a really good way to unearth a whole bunch of business. They do have overlapping products. There will be some, looks like spin-off divesting of certain parts that aren't going to make sense for this tie-up. And we're going to kind of keep an eye on how they do that with those different business units. But Pat, cybersecurity is on the rise. I mean, that's why I launched Cybersphere this week. We are going to start focusing much more, not just on data protection, but cybersecurity as a whole. Cohesity tied up with Veritas has a good story to tell. Great quote, by the way, in the press release. I never like seeing analyst quotes in press releases unless they're mine, but you really did do a good job. And I think that for the 10,000 customers and 3,000 partners that this combined venture is going to be able to support, there's a good story here. It's always exciting to see some very strategic consolidation, and appreciated Sanjay giving us some time, and let's go.
Yeah, the combined company size is impressive, right? You're looking at 1.6 billion in revenue. You're looking at 1.3 billion in ARR, 27% EBITDA margins. And God, I love EBITDA margins and I love EBITDA cash. It's big, right? What it does is it catapults Cohesity really up the chain in terms of market share as it relates to data protection. So, I mean, that's like going to be on day one when it combines. The things that I'll be looking out for, Daniel, integration is everything on this, and in particular, I think in this case, the technological integration of the architectures, right? How do you do that? Because you can only there can really only be one architecture if you want to scale. Otherwise, you're not going to get any of the benefits of the combined companies. And then you've got the idea of OpEx integration, and I'm not just talking about layoffs. I'm talking about who runs sales, who's running finance, who's running customer operations, right? These things have to get worked through very quickly. I do have confidence in Sanjay when I look at his background and talking. He's definitely aware that it needs to happen. His goal, obviously, is to do this as quickly and painlessly as possible on the technology side. He actually told me this in a side conversation that we had. What I like about this the most, Daniel, is it just shakes it up. We've already seen Commvault come out and try to basically AstroTurf this. By the way, exactly what I would have expected from Commvault, or even that matter, Rubrik, talking about the integration and what it means to customers. I consider that basic selling techniques to go after your competition. So I think it's going to be interesting. I'll be interested to hear what Rubrik has to say, Dell, IBM, folks like that.
And there you have it, everybody. There's the news. There's the tie-up. There's the story. Now, speaking of tying up in the news and the story, I had the chance to spend the last 2 days following Patrick around while he wore his Vision Pro 24/7. I even saw him driving his car with it on. It was really incredible. No, I'm just kidding. That's absolute farce. I have no interest in following Patrick around all day, nor do I. People might think I do, though. And nor do I have interest in knowing what it would be like when you're driving the car with that in front of your eyes. But I did have the chance to put your headset on. I have not run out to be one of the first glass holes to wear this thing. But how could we possibly do this segment and give both our positive and fruitful critique and then our typical Apple banter if we didn't at least have one amongst the two of us? So, Pat, tell everybody about what you've been doing on your Vision Pro.
Yeah, so I've been spending a lot of time on Vision Pro here, but I want to rewind for 1 second. So first of all, VR and AR are not new. In 2012, right, Google Glass came out. I laid down, I think, $2,500 in totality. The whole glass hole thing kind of blew up. They were kicking people out of bars for recording people, and it actually was a very elegant design, and it worked. I thought the killer app was Maps as well when you're driving, and even some cool shopping stuff. You go to a store, and then HoloLens came out from Microsoft, right? Heavy duty AR, big capabilities in 2015. So 9 years ago, right? And then we've seen a lot of stuff from Meta, right? I mean, big time. I mean, Meta is Zuck, turned the entire super tanker around to do this for a while, and then that didn't go great. I think realization set in that this is a long-term thing, and he cruised into back into generative AI, and I think his stock's up 50% this year. Heck, even Berkshire Hathaway was saying, "You never bet against Zuck." I love that statement. I can't imagine like two dramatically different worlds between Meta and Berkshire Hathaway. So it was pretty cool. So getting in here, let me give you the pluses and the minuses. I would say the pluses are when you're watching a video, it's the best experience on a 2D video that I've ever seen, and you can have make it look like a 75 or 100-inch TV. Okay, and I think that's pretty cool. Potentially for airplanes or something like that, or I think you're still going to buy a TV, maybe, but maybe you don't need to get one as big, and I think that's a plus. I think as it relates to getting through it, meaning the pinching and doing what you need to do to navigate, they added eye tracking plus some pretty snazzy finger control. I didn't feel like it was any better though than anything that Meta with the Quest had brought to the table, and that was a little bit disappointing. On the video side, I do think that, and we'll see. I mean, Apple has their own studio. This does drive a different type of media, right? One that is more interactive, and one that's surrounding. I can imagine watching. Again, this is nothing new. You could do this with the first virtual realities. You could watch a sports event. Okay, it's a lot clearer, but I'd like to see the ability to maybe get on the field, maybe get closer in, and that's going to require a pretty heavy lift of cameras and investments from all of these companies that actually produce the content. There was a dramatic dearth of apps out there. I think my favorite one, and maybe it's on its way, that I think would just be killer, would be the Calm app, right? This is an app to kind of get your stress under control. The Panorama, think of it as your wallpaper for Vision Pro, is stunning, and it's calming. Like they have one on Lake Mead that you can just chill and you can hear the birds and you're fully immersed. One of the negatives though, Dan, and this is really weird, like AirPods Pro are not compatible, and I can't believe it. And all I can think of is it was a safety thing, so you wouldn't get too immersed and you could hear a car coming to hit you maybe. I don't know, but true VR immersion is getting
Wouldn't
more
the
of the
sensors be
senses.
able to tell if you're in danger? Like, should they be able to actually use all those cameras and sensors to tell if the audibility would be putting you in danger, and then it could actually do like a shutdown because we could see you're walking down a busy street and we are turning AirPods function. Like, You would think that.
Dan, that's an amazing observation. And when I was thinking through this, by the way, there's cameras everywhere on the bottom and the top of it, but there's no cameras directly on the side.
Should run some LiDAR.
No, I know, maybe put a Luminar LiDAR on your head or something. That's a good one, Dan.
Thanks.
So, but I got to tell you, I used it once or twice, to surf the web, maybe watch a video or two.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to go back. I mean, it's like, and again, N equals 1 here, folks, but Apple.
Well, here's an idea. I mean, give it to Pico. That's Patrick's son, in case you don't know, and let him play with it and give his assessment. Because you think they made it for us old farts, or do you think they're this is like we're gonna make?
We always go through that, Dan. But I got to tell you, the people I see who buying this and putting it up there are in their 30s, and some of them are in their 40s. I've seen. I mean, how many 20-year-old kids can afford $3,500 worth of gear? Some. Anyways, my early read on this is that this is a development vehicle. I mean, have you guys seen the battery? The battery is bigger than my S24, like thicker, like twice the thickness of an S24 phone. And you got to stick it in your pocket. And I just can't imagine Steve Jobs ever green lighting a product like that. I'm on the second autobiography, and I just don't think there's any way he would ever let this pass scrutiny. So, hey, if you want to find a friend who has it and use it, go into the Apple store and get a demo before you lay any money down on this. Anyways, that's where I am, dude.
All right, listen, I'm going to kind of keep this short. I don't have one. I appreciate you sharing your use and how you were using it. I did get to try yours for a few minutes. I thought it was really immersive to have the content up in your face like that. Be able to watch. What? Sounds like I'm doing something wrong. I'm not. I mean, listen.
No, I was reading something. Sorry.
You have a movie, and it's cool. But Pat, I gotta. Okay. So you have a movie on, and it's like, do you get, you're talking about like the Calm app, and I'm thinking to myself, like the neck pain that you're gonna have of because it's like 10 pounds. I mean, I don't think it's actually.
Yeah, you can actually kick back, and you could put the display content anywhere by hitting the bar in the bottom. And
yeah, but I'm just saying, like when you're sitting there, like you do feel this thing. This is not.
Yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy.
Not, inconsequential.
And by the way, it'll fall apart. Like the magnetic
thing out.
The metal part. You got the no. I know.
But I can start to see how it could make sense. But Pat, like, here's the thing: I could not believe it took this long to create something this large. Now, again, the one big difference is sort of the looking through versus looking, and I think I'm sure that was harder. But I mean, remember, Google Glass was like a decade ago. I mean, how long ago was it? It was like 10 years ago, and they were a relatively lightweight pair of glasses with. So what I'm saying is we spent another decade to end up getting something that is the size of an Oculus Quest that's designed for full immersive VR. And, I see some of these videos of people using it, and I get it. It's cool. It's Apple. But like, are you really going to like wear this thing, drive with this is not like a lightweight, augmented experience. This is a full on, by the way, you're carrying a battery pack that's the size of an iPhone Max or a large iPhone.
Huge.
And, I see that people like shoving it in the back, like to kind of put it all together. I don't know, man. Listen, I think Rowan Trollope said something really interesting. Rowan's a former 5'9" CEO of Redis now. And he said something along the lines of like, people keep making the comparison to iPhone 1. And he said, iPhone 1 I started using at that time, and I've used it every day for every day of my life since iPhone 1. He said, I just don't see the same thing here. Like this is not something that people will use all day, every day, forever. There's something missing here. And my point is the utility and the weight is too much. All right, dude, we've gone way too slow, way too long today. We were going to run. Do you have a few minutes to go long? Because we're not going to get through 6.
I do.
All right.
I have a few minutes.
Okay, let's take a breath and talk about Google. Let's talk about Google. Let's talk about Bard, or let's not talk about Bard. February 8th, 2024, Bard becomes Gemini. So Bard, which had a mixed sort of beginning, launch that kind of, brought some ire, but eventually seemingly turned around and Google caught up. And I was impressed with a lot of work they did with Vertex and in the cloud and of course the models. But, about a month and a half, 2 months back, Pat, they came out with Gemini. They came out with a big, good. Jesse Coulter, AMD, said Pat has a few minutes.
That's
she agreed. But basically that, it was like a rebirth, rebrand. And that, of course, got met with some scrutiny because the highlight sizzle reel was done in a way that everybody wanted to throw a fit about. But I saw right through that. That was fine. But what's really happening here, Pat, is Google's moving on to the next model. And Google, you're talking about a multi-decade mass investment between, with Brain and all the things that Google has been doing, DeepMind. This company is far along. And while OpenAI has gotten a lot of the acclaim, Google has some serious muscle here to offer. But now Bard has basically become Gemini. And now Gemini Advanced is like the new cool, some people might compare it to the GPT-4 Turbo or whatever you want to call it. This is the Google version of that. And now they're offering this to be, it can be your personal tutor, your assistant. It can help you ideation, creating content. And by the way, it costs what, $20 a month to get access to this? So there's kind of the free product, which is Bard became Gemini. Now there's Gemini Advanced, which is the 4.0 Turbo, which is the paid thing that people can use on their mobile device. And it's available now, Pat. Also, though, Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google, came out and talked a little bit about where this all is heading. By the way, I don't know if you know this, Pat, but since it's public information on Twitter, I'll just go ahead and share it. I am a Gemini. And I was born on May 27th. So I appreciated Google, considering my personal experiences in life and naming their product after my birthday. You got to get, when you have the number 2 analyst, according to some list somewhere, you got to think about them when you're naming your products. But here's the thing is this is going to evolve into another area, Pat, that I think is really important. 2 areas. One, workspace. Okay, Microsoft rules the roost here for productivity. Let's be very clear. But actually, I pervasively use Google Docs, Google Drive, or not Drive. What do they call it now? It's not Drive anymore. Or is it still Drive? I don't know. But I use Docs. I use Sheets. I use the presentations tool. Workspace, Pat. The ability to put Duet AI into Workspace is going to make it a more compelling product. Now, of course, Copilot is going to be the counter to that and say, are people going to leave? I don't know that, but I think it's a growing business. I think this is a chance for Google to differentiate with Workspace. And then, of course, Duet AI becomes Gemini. So that's the updated name. So it's Gemini for Workspace. And it's going to be, Gemini is basically Duet AI. And so it's going to be a support tool in the cloud for developers to speed up coding, data protection and cyber attacks. And then, of course, other things that Google Cloud will build around this new Gemini. It's really a little bit of a branding exercise, Pat, and it's really the announcement of its next LLM, now available, $20 a month. Come get some. I'll let you try it first for pay. You tell me how it goes, and then I'll pay for it.
Yeah, Dan, that was a great rundown. Basically everything I was planning on saying.
Oh, that's right. When you let me go first, you're screwed.
Well, here's the thing: is that it's not. I haven't used it, and quite frankly, very few people in the press have used it. If you remember, the previous 2 versions of Bard got pretty much panned and shot down. Not necessarily what it could do, but how the demos were taken and they were presented to folks. So Google is going to be a player in generative AI 110%. The only question is how much of that AI goodness and consumer love will be taken by either Apple or Microsoft. My back end is for productivity is Workspace as well, but my front end is very much Microsoft at this point. I haven't found a graceful way to do it. In fact, you and I were both working on a presentation that lost its fidelity. It was a PowerPoint presentation being edited inside of slides. It lost its fidelity, and there were some font challenges, and you just can't have that. Very successful in spreadsheets and also Word and stuff like that. But anyways, I just don't feel like there's anything definitive coming out of Gemini other than the paid version. The advanced version is going to be better than Bard, which is now called Gemini. And that's it. That's all I can add. That's all I know right now.
And there we have it, Pat. So that takes us to the last and final topic. We're going to do a little rumor mongering. Rumors are fun. So I think I shared, Pat, and this was like the third or fourth time that I basically saw the deal is inked, or the ink hasn't dried, or there's a deal to be made, or that basically Intel is going to be doing a whole lot of foundry work for NVIDIA. Pat, I won't take any oxygen on this one. I'm going to let you go straight into it.
So I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I put a 95% chance of this happening. And it's not what TSMC might not be doing with CoWoS, which is their packaging technology for, these multi-tile and anything that has to do with HBM. It's just that they don't have the capacity. NVIDIA is already a Ramp C partner with Intel. So if you need to get the Defense Department will buy something, it has to be part of the Ramp C program, and it can't be coming from TSMC. So I think there is a 95% chance that this is going to be the case. And hats off to the IFS folks and NVIDIA for hopefully increasing the amount of output that it can get.
Yeah, listen, Pat, I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time. We don't like to spend a ton on rumors. We prefer to deal in facts. But as analysts, some of our work is to sort of try to prognosticate and understand what's happening and what's going to happen in the future. And, I think sometimes when you see and you hear something enough, you just kind of need to get some feedback of, is this real? Well, this could be, real volume. And basically, from a packaging standpoint, the rumor was could be 300,000 H100 GPUs per month. And so I wrote in a MarketWatch piece with the bull case for Intel. And look, it's funny how it's like I said, everybody always wants things to be, it's like an exclusivity thing. Like if I say Intel is doing okay, it means I'm saying everyone else is going to do badly. And it's not that. It's that in the world of AI, in the world of compute, all tech companies are going to grow. The market's going to grow. Cloud is going to grow. You see cloud accelerating. AWS grew 14%. Microsoft grew 30%. Google grew 26%. They all calculated slightly differently. And the point is cloud is accelerating. Well, cloud's accelerating because AI is accelerating. AI is accelerating means there's going to be more chip manufacturing. AI PCs, more chip manufacturing. Automotive, more chip manufacturing. Intel's IFS was a big headline in my bull case. The point is we've got geopolitical issues with the East. You got TSMC having a lot of trouble getting people here to the U.S. And then what they're building is not at the very leading edge here either in the United States. So Intel has the chance with what it's doing. And, I heard even today that the CHIPS Act and the money is supposed to come as soon as next 4 to 8 weeks was the rumor today. Again, we'll see. But that we need this here. We need this here. The U.S. needs to be manufacturing, needs to be doing packaging, needs to be part of the foundry ecosystem, and needs to be helping to deliver at the leading edge. This is good news. We want a strong Intel. Of course, we want competition. Of course, we want to see ARM and AMD and all the others succeed. But Intel being strong, especially in the foundry, is good for the world, good for the technology ecosystem. Pat, we're a little bit over, so I'm going to call it there. Great show. Had a lot of fun today. Tell everybody what you're going to watch next on your new Vision Pro. You're going to watch funny movies. You're going to do the Calm app. What are you going to do?
I mean, if I could get the column app, I would do that. But I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm doing action. Yeah, if I can get, I do Google TV. If I can get that going on the browser, then maybe that'll be the case, because Google does not have an app on there, and my guess it's licensing issues. But hey, I got a wrap.
Yep, there we go. So hey, everyone, hit that subscribe button. We appreciate you joining us this week and every week. But for this episode, it's time to say goodbye. We'll see you all later.
Bye-bye.